morning. Thank you for joining us today, and please take your seats. Welcome to today's program on International Emergency Preparedness and Response. My name is Ann Heinrich, and I'm the Director of the Office of Nuclear Incident Policy and Cooperation at the Department of Energy's National Nuclear Security Administration. I'm very pleased to moderate this event today to focus on emergency preparedness and response because it's an area that I think often just works quietly in the background. We quietly work diligently to prepare for emergencies, yet today EPR, emergency preparedness and response, is very much in the foreground. It's very highlighted in the media today, it's in people's minds, and it's in the news daily. Unfortunately, with Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the first ever armed combat around operating civil nuclear power plants, we are once again reminded how important emergency preparedness and response is in the nuclear and radiological arena, and why it's so important that we invest in these capabilities that are in place to save lives and protect the environment. To start our program today, we'll hear from two leaders in nuclear safety and security. We had on our program to be opened by DDG Ms. Everard, but she is not able to be with us today. She's been called away at the last minute. And in her place, Mr. Carlos Torres Vidal, who's the director of the Incident and Emergency Center, will deliver her presentation. So Carlos, you have the floor. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everybody. As Anne already said, here on behalf of my DDG, DD Ever, that is sending you a very warm regards, and she's wishing that we have a very productive side event. Let me say, my dear administrator, Ms. Hruby, and dear Anne, this is a very good opportunity for us to share some ideas and also experience, and probably we should spend some time on thinking how we can improve this cooperation, particularly in this case with the United States, to improve our capabilities and also our know-how and our technology to respond to nuclear and radiological events. Obviously, it is a pleasure for us, that you organize this event and you invite us, the experts, on this issue, and I would say the first responders to this challenging situation that we are facing. And for us to have that is a high recognition that what we are doing is important, and to have here so relevant officials from the United States is really important. The second point is that we are going to talk about national and international capacity. Really respond. It's not only the capacity building, it's also the technology, it's also the infrastructure, it's also the people, the know-how. And this is what we are going to talk to today. But really, I would have preferred to concentrate on the technical issues, but it's really difficult to avoid to refer to the case we are facing today, which is Ukraine. And I'm going to refer to that. Everything I'm going to say, obviously, has been already said by my DG in his public statements that are becoming, I would say, an international reference, because the statements are not only political, but are also technical. And we are very proud that all these technical inputs are coming mainly from the IEC and from the people some of the people you see here, that they are working 24/7 since February. Okay, it's clear that this situation we have already for 6 months in Ukraine, it's difficult to accept that. The concept is unacceptable, but I would prefer to say that it's difficult to accept that, and we have to continue working on that, because the situation, it could lead us to a very serious accident, nuclear accident, at the moment in Zaporizhzhia. We started with a complicated situation where the problems were coming from all the facilities, but now we are concentrated on that. And as you know, I mean, already the IAEA deployed 4 missions there. I mean, our DG is leading that. And really, he was very much interested from the very beginning in having the best quality of information and as much accurate as possible, as much factual as possible. And we are now in a situation where we have already our staff there. We in the center, we are evolving and moving very fast, and even more now, one of the things we are doing also is monitoring the security, and we are the emergency contact from them, which is even putting us on our shoulder another responsibility. And we did that very fast. We developed all these instructions for the field, instructions for our people here, and now we are, working on briefing all the people for that. Let me say that this situation shows how important is the international cooperation on that. It's extremely important because we are here in a, multilateral organization, and we are responding to this specific situation through our international cooperation. And this meeting, this side event is showing that. It is also really important, these national capabilities. And in this particular case, this transboundary impact, again, is something we have to take into account and consider that, because there are also countries around with some concern about the situation, just in case there is a severe accident on that. But I'm not going to go too much in details, but on this opening remarks, my DDG wanted to refer to the key of all these things, which is, and also is the main purpose of this event, is to talk about our tools in the center and our capabilities in the center, and probably to have a very short discussion on how we can improve that, taking into account what is going on, and what are the areas that we need to reinforce. Let me refer very briefly to the UC system, this unified system for information exchange in incident and emergencies. It's showing being very useful. Obviously, for this case of Ukraine, we have to introduce some changes in the use of the flow of information that we can go into detail later on, or even in our bilaterals, we can explain you how the flexible way we were using this system that, in my opinion, is one of the key elements we have now here to communicate with the member states, from the center to the member states. The other way around, it should be, we can talk about that. The RANET, where is Anne? Where is Anne? Anne is there. The RANET is a network which is really working. It's demonstrating that it's a very useful channel to provide assistance to the member states. I know that Anne has already some ideas to improve that, and we are ready to work with you on that. Let me refer also to IRMIS. IRMIS is our system to monitor environmental radioactivity around the sites or in the environment in general, and it's extremely, I would say, useful tool for us to have a picture of how is, the radiation around the areas of interest. But behind the IRMIS is technology. And we would like to go further. We would like, obviously, to improve the IRMIS system to make that complete, universal. But at the same time, we would like, during the next years, to try to think about which new technologies it could be used, particularly in this center, to improve our response to any event. Therefore, I would like to finish saying basically that it is crucial, these kind of events, the dialogue between the member states, but it is also extremely important, the conventions. We cannot forget about the legal framework. And the meeting of competent authorities under this convention is something key. I just was talking about that with Anne. The next one is in 2 years' time, but now we are starting to talk about that. And we are sharing some ideas about our long-term vision. We have big events coming. We have the Complex 3, which is also coming in 2 or 3 years from now. And we have already approved a big, I say big, international conference on 2025 on emergencies. And we would like to focus on review all this, experience we are collecting during this year, all the experience we collect also with the exercises and the Complex 3, and all the experience we collect with you and other countries working bilaterally. And I now finish, and I'm ready to have a very useful meeting with you. And thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much, USA, for this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you for setting the stage for us today. And our next speaker is the Honorable Jill Hruby, who's the Administrator of the National Nuclear Security Administration in the United States, where she leads the nation's nuclear security enterprise. Ms. Hruby, you have the floor.
Well, good morning, everyone. And thanks to Anne and Jay and my NNSA colleagues for helping organize this important event at this moment in time. It's an honor to be here to discuss the importance of international emergency preparedness and response. As Carlos mentioned, it is imperative, given what's going on, that we put more emphasis on this function. And so this side event couldn't be at a more important time. Nuclear and radiological emergencies, as we know, don't respect national boundaries. What one country does to prevent or respond to an emergency can profoundly affect its neighbors, the environment, and the global community. The IAEA and member states have an obligation to prepare for nuclear and radiological emergencies. Fortunately, we have many of the tools, resources, and expertise needed to deploy in these emergencies. But we've learned over time you have to evolve and continue to invest in these tools and practice their use. It's better to practice without a real emergency, but sometimes we learn most from the real emergencies. And the IAEA's Incident and Emergency Center, the IEC, is a global focal point for nuclear and radiological safety and security related to incident response, including coordinating international assistance efforts. Today, you will hear from IAEA officials about tools they offer to aid and advise member states and the coordination of international assistance. You will also hear from multiple U.S. agencies, including NNSA, regarding our experiences using these tools and our perspectives on coordinating assistance. The IEC maintains a unified platform for member states to communicate in an emergency, a system for voluntarily sharing radiation monitoring data, and capabilities for assessment and prognosis of an emergency, among other things. These tools and capabilities are of paramount importance for successful emergency response. The United States, the IAEA, and the global community must continue to work together to address current and emerging threats safely and responsibly. As we've seen in the past, incidents such as Chernobyl and Fukushima, radiological and nuclear emergencies can rapidly exceed the capacity of any one nation to handle the potentially devastating consequences to public health. Maintaining a robust emergency preparedness and response readiness posture will, while continuing to strengthen and expand international collaboration for nuclear emergency response, are the most effective tools we have to prevent and contain any incidents. The potential nuclear and radiological incidents associated with Russia's invasion of Ukraine have highlighted the importance of international emergency preparedness and response. It has changed my life. It has changed the life of the others in NNSA who work on this and worry about it. And honestly, things like Miss Everard can't be here today scares me at this moment in time. Like, what is she doing? What's happened? As you know, I know we're all living this, right? It is a new world. And the unified system for information exchange in incidents and emergencies has provided a mechanism for Ukraine to share information on the status of nuclear and radiological facilities and that have been directly impacted or potentially could be impacted by Russia's invasion. These last 7 months have shown us how important the use of IEC platforms, such as the International Radiation Monitoring Information System, IRMIS now rolls off our tongue, and the Unified System for Information Exchange in Incidents and Emergencies, and the Response and Assistance Network are how important these are in responding to actual and potential nuclear and radiological incidents. For years, the United States has made significant contributions to the IEC, which has worked tirelessly to monitor the situation in Ukraine with the goal of safe and secure operation of their nuclear facilities. We commend the IAEA and the IEC on their efforts to maintain preparedness for any potential nuclear and radiological incident, and we will continue to support the IEC's coordination mission. We have and will continue to provide training, resources, and technical assistance capabilities and expertise on topics of emergency preparedness and response to enhance existing practices of our partners and the IAEA. I know when we work together, we are stronger and more successful in our response, and we will be better prepared for future emergencies. I hope that you find today's side event on emergency preparedness and response interesting and informative. During the next hour, you'll be hearing from my colleagues at NNSA, as well as officials of the U.S. Department of Energy and the U.S. Department of State. And finally, I just want to take a moment to especially thank the IAEA's Incident and Emergency Center for their participation in today's event, for the important work that they do, for Carlos, for you, and DDG Everard for your leadership of the IAEA's Department of Nuclear Safety and Security, and for support of this event. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for setting the stage for us for the continuing presentations and discussion of emergency preparedness and response. And our next speaker on the program is back to Carlos Torres Vidal in his real role of the Director of the Incident and Emergency Center. He's already set the stage for us and familiarized us with some acronyms that we use often here in the IEC with IRMIS and RONET and the like, and he'll give us a rather high-level overview of the tools that are available at the IEC.
Okay, I'm here again. Probably now a bit more relaxed. Administrator Hruby, I fully agree with you. I mean, this situation changed plenty of lives, including my life and plenty of people who is over there. It changed our life, obviously keeping us busier, but giving us a mission that we are proud to fulfill and try to go through that and to be successful on that. And at the same time, for me particularly, I have the chance to meet this fantastic team that we have here in the IEC. And during the last 6 months, we developed a good relationship between all of us. And we are united, working towards to respond to this situation. Therefore, maybe it's changing our life for good, and not for completely for bad. But okay, we'll see. I'm trying to be positive today. Now, let me go through quickly about the center and our tools and capabilities that already are well known by some of the people who is already here. But probably going through, we can make some comments, and about the situation and how we see all these tools, after these 6 intensive months that we were living. The first point is the IC, as we say, is the focal point for an international emergency. We see that, and we are demonstrating that. The reality is demonstrating that we are in the center and we are in the middle, and we have to be able to respond. And we have to be able to respond technically, but not only technically, but also institutionally. And also at some point, we have to provide all the elements for our high-level management to make also policy and to go through this crisis, through this international community, and to look for solutions as they are doing. Therefore, this is already has been confirmed, and we are going to continue working on that. For your information, we have now the 2 systems working because we developed a specific system for Ukraine to respond, but we have the standard system for responding to a standard, a trigger. For the trigger for that, for the nuclear and radiological events, also working in parallel. We have the system working also in parallel. Let me say the framework for the ones who are not familiar with that is extremely important. Basically, the key element is the 2 conventions, and based on the conventions, we already, we have already the joint radiation emergency management plans, and even we have also the safety standards around all the things, and therefore we have a very complete, I would say, legal framework to go through, and now it's being tested, and as far as I know, it's working. We haven't had any big problem for us to work under this umbrella. We will have time in the next CAP to probably to go back to that, but really, the experience is positive. We do not see any kind of impediment to do our work. Our roles and responsibilities, you see over there, this is the standard one, and we have notification, public information, assessment and prognosis, assistance and interagency coordination. It is not now the place, but there are also some comments after this experience to all this situation that we were doing in a bit different as it was thought originally, particularly, the notification. It is not only notification, we have here an internal work where all this information, which is being collected and analyzed in the center, is also being obviously injected, what we call here the 28th floor, which is our high management. But at the very end, our DDG is the one leading the response to the emergency, which is a big difference than the standard situation. Public information, obviously, is something broader. We are not only informing the public, we are informing the international community, which is a big one, and there is, part of the international community is part of the conflict, and they are receiving information through us, which is making a qualitative difference on the information we have to produce. Therefore, there are also some changes also here. Assessment and prognosis, we are already working on that. We have done during this period of time several already assessments, and we are testing how we are. Frederick is over there. I don't know where is Frederick, but he was here, but probably he's now responding because we are preparing now the daily report. We prepare every day a daily report with the information we have collected during the night, so to report to our DG. And there are some people who was here, but now I do not see them. Now they are working on that. And we also regularly receive information from our people in the field, and we receive early in the morning and also in the evening is technical information that we process and report. But assessment and prognosis is something really important, and we are already working on that. And I see over there Olivier. Olivier is there? Okay. yeah, is there, and he knows very well how much interested we are on that, and we are already developing some ideas with Olivier, with France, basically. Assistance, we have run it, we are implementing. I see Esbelana over there, that she is our coordinator for Ukraine assistance. It's broader than run it, the way we are working with Ukraine, and our DG and our DDG insisted on that. They wanted to use all the IAEA resources to provide assistance to Ukraine. Therefore, it's broader than run it. What we are doing from the center is to contribute to this big IAEA effort on assisting Ukraine. And the interagency coordination also here is a responsibility. We have to coordinate all the agencies. But for us in this case, it's very difficult to activate all these agencies when you do not have a proper nuclear power plant accident. It's a conflict, and it's something that we are continue thinking and continue exploring, but it's something which is obviously in these cases, is relevant, but is our DG the one doing this work. But for a nuclear power plant accident, obviously it's crucial. We have, as you know, very good procedures, and my opinion is that in case of a nuclear power plant accident, the center is, the procedures are, perfect. It's to push a button and then everything go smoothly and going well. The situation we are facing is a bit different, and therefore we have to fix some things. For the one that not, very familiar with the center, you have in this slide our structure here, and you see, and you have the different levels. In any case, these emergencies in the house is very important, and even our Director General is involved in the following up, and also in the resolution and in the response of the emergency. Obviously, as you go down, the intensity is, increasing, and obviously our DDG is also, fully involved in that. And at the very end, the director of the IC has the responsibility for the implementation of everything. In this case, normally, if in the case of a nuclear power plant accident, everything is basically around the IC and the director with connection up. But in this case, the center of gravity, I'm a nuclear engineer, I cannot, avoid to refer to these physics things, is moving up. And then there is an intensive activity at the director general level and DDG level also. We mentioned already UC. Our administrator already also mentioned UC as a key element, and it's a key element. I think as soon as we introduce information into the system, all the member states has this information available. It's a very extremely useful tool. It's also sensitive, and we have very strict rules to use the system. We are following that. In the case of Ukraine, obviously, we have to open other channels, and we are working on that. But the message here is that this system is extremely useful, and we are working on improving that, and we have already plans for doing so. Run it. It is the network we have to assist member states in general. The way to use that is, as soon as we got a request, we put, start up the engines and put the machine to work. It's a machine working very well, has plenty of legal connotations, but we are very happy because we have a good relationship with, and a fluent relationship with Perry, which is our, director of the legal office, and we are working as a team on that. There is already some improvement that has been detected, but basically it's always in the legal part. It's always, you know the lawyer, probably better than me, but they have always, questions about the commas and all these kind of things. But we are coping with that, and now we are testing the system with Ukraine, and at the moment it's working. You have all the functional areas. But only here the message is that, RANET in principle is covering everything, providing that the member states are able to provide. is covering everything. But those are the main area that has been already worked about, and the one that we have already agreements with the member states. This is a very useful system, this International Radiation Monitoring Information System. Stefan is here, over there, and he's the one responsible for implementing that. And you see here, down on your right, this is Zaporizhzhia. And for you, how powerful could be this system? We cannot say that it's real time, but we are following very closely the radioactivity around the sites. And also, as you know, we are connected with the different network from the countries. We have already made some progress on connecting countries like Saudi Arabia. There are already some countries joined the network. We would like to put during the next month more emphasis for having a complete picture around the world, because there are some gaps. One gap which is bringing my attention is Latin America. We don't have nearly anything there, and it's something that we are going to work with Florian and Stefan to try to have a more balanced, information system and information. But we were also able to follow, Chernobyl when we had this situation in Chernobyl. Therefore, it showed up it was very useful for us. I also to tell you that the center has a complete set of procedures and tools to respond to a nuclear power plant accident. It's complete, and in my opinion, even there is no any gap. If you ask my opinion, probably the area when there is some room to be improved and to make some progress is in the assessment and prognosis. That is something relatively new for the center. It's also sophisticated, and you need software tools, and we are already working on that. But the message for you is that if we have a nuclear power plant accident, everything is already under formal procedures. Yeah. Okay. Then this is important. Attached to ERMIS, we have all this technology to measure radioactivity. Is connected via satellite. But here the message for you is that we would like to make progress on the technology. We would like to explore which technologies we could use from here we could use for having a more effective response from the IAEA, but also to share that with the member states. Public information tools. Peter is here. Is one of our senior experts, and we have even public information simulators that we use in the response. And we have expertise in the center, not only to inform the public, but also to manage the information that it could be around an event, and to develop some strategies. And for your info, there are already several member states very much interested on that. I'm finishing. And EPRIMS. I'm finishing. EPRIMS is basically our database of information about the countries. We are working on that, and we are trying to have as much complete as possible. We collect all the EPR information from the member states over there, and we use that for developing our strategies for the implementation of the EPR framework. EPREF is our service for review the EPR in the member states, and I would like to highlight that. It's very important. In my opinion, it's one of the most important service. Activities we have in the center, because it allows us with an independent team of international experts to go to the countries and to make an assessment of the situation. With that, I finish. This is the structure of our coordination with other organizations in case of a nuclear power plant or radiological emergency. With that, I finish, and I think that you have had enough from me for today. I will try to be quiet over there, and probably to follow up your discussions and maybe to make any question. Okay, thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you for the interesting presentation of all of the work at the Incident and Emergency Center, which is voluminous, and we could have gone on longer. So thank you for making it as short as possible. Our next presentation was going to be on the U.S. experiences for the IAEA tools for emergency response. And in the interest of time, we'll just provide that presentation for you if you are interested. And at this point, then, we will move on to a roundtable discussion. So our next portion of this event is a roundtable discussion from senior leaders in the U.S. government who will discuss U.S. perspectives on coordinating international radiological and nuclear assistance. And while I introduce our speakers, could I invite you to come up to the podium and sit wherever you like. So I'll introduce the speakers. Each speaker will present brief opening remarks, and then we'll move to a discussion. Our panelists include Ms. Corey Hinderstein, who is the Deputy Administrator for Defense Nuclear Nonproliferation at the U.S. National Nuclear Security Administration, where she leads NNSA's work to prevent state and non-state actors from developing nuclear weapons or acquiring weapons usable nuclear or radiological materials, equipment, technology, and expertise. We also have Mr. J. Tilden, who is the Deputy Undersecretary for Counterterrorism and Counterproliferation at the NNSA, where his responsibilities include preparing for, responding to, and successfully resolving nuclear and radiological accidents and incidents worldwide. We have Mr. Anthony Wier, who is the Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Bureau of International Security and Nonproliferation at the U.S. Department of State, where he focuses on biological policy, multilateral nuclear and security affairs, nuclear energy, safety and security. And Mr. Michael Goff, the Senior Advisor to the Assistant Secretary of Nuclear Energy, Office of Nuclear Energy at the U.S. Department of Energy, also joins us. And Mr. Goff has more than 30 years of experience in nuclear energy, serving in various roles at national laboratories and at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. So thank you to all of our speakers for joining us today for this roundtable, and I look forward to a good, robust discussion. I'd like to start off with a question for you, and then I'll pass the microphone around. I don't want two hot mics at once. Actually, I'll give it to you. Thank you. And turning off the microphone gives us a loud noise, so we just leave it open. I think would be the best procedure here. Thank you. So our first question today is, after more than 7 months of this conflict in Ukraine, is the international community adapting and overcoming the challenges encountered in the earlier days of the response? And for this first question, I'd like to turn to Ms. Hinderstein. Thank you.
Sure, thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank Anne, Heinrich, and the team for putting this event together. I mean, obviously, as we're sitting here and has been reflected many times, we're living in a world where emergency preparedness and response is as relevant as ever. But what I hope to emphasize is that even when we're not living through a crisis, when we're not actually managing a crisis, emergency preparedness and response needs to be the foundation and baseline from which we're acting in so many of the areas that we pay attention to, certainly at NNSA, but across the U.S. interagency and in the international community. And we heard, that there are networks, there are systems, there are assistance programs, and there's equipment. But I also wanted to make the point that, a good and robust system internationally of emergency preparedness and response is about more than equipment and technology. It's really about developing the capabilities, which include the people and the relationships that are required to actually act in place when there's an emergency, right? So that is, the key is to be able to act quickly, to be able to act effectively, and to be able to act sustainably. And so emergency preparedness and response, to me, kind of lives on a spectrum. And that spectrum spans from preventative action. Preparedness also crosses over into prevention, right? The most effective response is not to have to respond. It's 100% effective that if you don't have to respond. And so, for example, in my program, we have a program called Nuclear Smuggling Detection and Deterrence. And I wanted to focus on that second D, because an effective deterrent means that you are removing the doubt that an adversary may have that they would be successful if they tried to conduct an action that would have a nuclear or radiological consequence. And, and so having those detection and deterrence systems in place is, to me, the first and early step on the spectrum that leads through to emergency preparedness and response. But if we can't rely on the success of those systems, and we also can't rely on the fact that that in many cases it might not be the result of a deliberate action. We saw in Fukushima, for example, the emergency preparedness came into play, and the response was necessary because of these dual natural disasters of the earthquake and the tsunami. So the key in all those cases is to have pieces in place. So this is where I get to your question, Anne. What have we learned? We've learned that our ability to respond in Ukraine effectively has really been built on that foundation of preparedness that ran through those decades of cooperation with Ukraine and with the partners in and around Ukraine in the region. It relied on us having the technical capability to deploy when the time came, that technical capability had been exercised, that we had not just practiced but refined our tools over time. And when we saw the map that Carlos displayed, it was of the ERMIS sensors, but it wasn't just of the ERMIS sensors, right? When we look into why the sensors are where they are, it's because those are the areas not only that obviously have more nuclear activity, but where we've focused a lot of attention. And we note that a lot of the globe has not had that sustained attention. You mentioned South America in particular. And so I do think that the other lesson is we don't know where an incident or an accident is going to happen, and we have to invest into some of those so far underserved areas of the globe as well. So I'll stop there, but I'm happy to get into more of those points as we continue the discussion.
Thank you very much. And I have upset the program. We were supposed to start with opening remarks from each one of the speakers. So Jay's waving me on. So in your responses, panelists, if you would like to include your opening remarks, that would be quite welcome. I apologize for that. But Mr. Wier, would you like to contribute to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well? And if I could, Joe, before I start, just to take a couple of seconds first to praise the IAEA team, and particularly Carlos and the IEC team. Has been fantastic work, and I think they should be very proud. But also want to make sure we take a moment to actually praise the Ukrainian staff on the ground, that in a sense all of us have the luxury of being in a position to be there to help, but these are human beings who are operating under the most difficult circumstances and are doing not just what they can for their homes and their neighborhoods and their region, but for the world, and frankly for all the goals that are being pursued here more broadly. And so I think it's really important to pause for a second and just start there with our gratitude. So from my perspective at the Department of State and my bureau at the International Security and Nonproliferation, in terms of adapting, a couple things I guess I would highlight. Building on what Corey said, certainly I think the kind of, and what Administrator Hruby said, unfortunately we've sort of had to learn by doing a lot in this experience. Certainly I think we've seen the critical importance of USIE and the information that's being put out to member states and to the public more broadly. ERMIS is really critical, and I think I definitely agree that needs to be a really important focus as we go forward for filling out it, because I can just say from someone who's sitting sort of at the translation moment between technical experts and policymakers, that level of detail and facts and the sort of authority that the IAEA brings into the situation, sort of away from news reporting and sort of a whole lot of urgency and concern, but not a lot of facts or information, has actually been totally critical in sort of just making sure that at least we're focused on the facts of the situation and not of the nerves or the panic. And so I think that's a kind of key lesson I see here. So for my bureau at ISN and the State Department, we're an assistance provider, and so we have provided a lot of assistance over the last 6 months, since Russia's further invasion of Ukraine. We're also sort of the named lead on coordinating on overseas radiological and nuclear events. My view is that's an important role, but mostly to just be helpful and get out of the way. That is to make sure that we're doing as much collating from all the various sources within the United States government, because there are a lot of different sources, making sure that information is provided kind of in a comprehensive sense with the IAEA and then shared around the other member states, right? Because in an emergency situation, there's always this kind of danger of everybody rushing in to help where they have a connection or where they have a resource. And that can be really helpful, except when it ends up oversupplying one particular area and sort of under-recognizing another particular area of need. And so this, RONET and the kind of coordination role is a really important clearinghouse just to make sure that nothing's getting missed in sort of that rush. And so I think all we can do is continue to build out those practices and continue at adapting it. One of the things we've clearly seen has been challenges in supply chains, particularly with various consumables in the nuclear enterprise, and how to kind of get those up. Easy for policymakers to kind of capture, say, diesel fuel for backup generators is a problem, or a challenge. But there's a lot of other consumables to make sure the experts are connecting with those chains and making sure, okay, are we actually closing all this? Because you realize in this, the nuclear enterprise is quite a complicated supply system, and there's a lot of parts to it. And this sort of information sharing is critical, I think, to responding in a kind of the necessary way and making sure you're just not missing one small bit. So those would be my thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to move on to a second question, and that is, how does the response situation in Ukraine compare to past instances of international assistance, such as Fukushima response? And Mr. Tilden, would you like to start on that response?
Sure. Yeah, I'll get a little more tactical here. As you know, the NNSA, we're responsible for providing the scientific and technical responses to a nuclear accident or incident here in the U.S. Or worldwide. And of course, being in great connection with IAEA has been a long-standing mission. One of the big changes that we saw, and it started actually with, interestingly, it started to shape with Fukushima. One of your big issues is the tyranny of time and distance. How do I get somewhere quickly? And also there was a presumption that you're going to have people kind of get there and be on the ground and do work. And if you thought about the only reason why the U.S. response to Japan was reasonably timely was because they were a treaty partner, and we had U.S. citizens there, and we had a legal ability to go ahead and start deploying. And the Japanese government was dealing with very real first-order problems, which was the massive loss from the earthquake and the tidal wave. And so their permissions were lagging, but we actually got to be there in time. And then we did some very creative things on how to deploy. Ukraine, however, is a very different problem, right? As long as it's a combat zone, and I really want to appreciate Anthony's point, we all talk about responding, and we are doing meaningful things, but it is very clearly in the hands of those heroic operators who have managed to artfully keep Zaporizhia running when it was running, and now in cold shutdown. But not being able to deploy provides different challenges, and that's where I think Corey mentioned these long-standing non-proliferation relationships. Well, these are agencies that as an emergency responder I had never dealt with. My folks didn't really deal with. We leveraged that relationship to quickly connect, so we were sending people and equipment to kind of the neighboring countries to provide additional equipment handing it off at the border. And that's really, that's one of those aha moments where you realize now we are literally supporting via proxy, right, the emergency response that needs to happen because we can't be there. The next piece too is communications. This is something that haunts us all the time. And I don't necessarily mean about how to effectively message, because when you're communicating with like peers, messaging pretty easy. Messaging to the public is a different conversation, which I'm sure we will hit. But communication systems and creativity in the use of that, right? When you have an event that's unfolding and it's already happening, you will use any system you can, right? And we have relied upon the systems that are here as platforms, but also because of various operational necessities, you know, I mean, there's a lot of multiple channels by which the Ukraine is receiving direct assistance. So one of the other main things too, which I think I'll bring back to like, is informing our seniors, right? This is something I think right now, it's critical that the IEC is providing to the seniors here. What is going on? Are we ahead of the problem or behind the problem? And that was something I think that my boss, the administrator, just mentioned. She's like, we've been living this. Because ultimately, I think we all know it, but I'll say it again, we're on this cusp of potentially the next big rollout of nuclear energy. And the last thing we need is a major event a la Fukushima that puts question into the public's mind about the future and the safety of nuclear energy. Also, what Ukraine needs are these facilities remaining intact, because winter is coming, and the goal here would be to turn these things back on to provide much needed steam and electricity for the country. So working through that communications about what's going on, how bad could it be? And then how do you then communicate and or adjust your strategies for what things are flowing and things of that sort really is critical. And a lot of this comes down to the knowledge of the reactor and the staff, which I think is a perfect handoff to my good colleague here, and so John.
Thanks very much. Yeah, it's worth noting, you know, of the folks up here, we kind of come at this, so I'm from the Office of Nuclear Energy within the Department of Energy. So we're focused largely on, you know, what Jay was talking about, that next rollout of, you know, advanced nuclear, making sure we move forward to have nuclear energy as part of our clean energy future. So we strongly look at this, though, from that perspective of, you know, any nuclear event affects the whole nuclear enterprise. You know, so we want to make sure that, you know, we all treat this as a priority, because we're all in this together, making sure and how we respond. So we're coming in with that perspective. Our normal roles, you know, more pushing advocacy and moving forward on nuclear energy, but we've got to make sure that we use our capabilities to help in this area. So with that in mind, you know, some of the things that we've, you know, look at as far as how we respond is we're largely a technical group. So we want to make sure, and I think this is one thing that we did with the Fukushima event and we've recognized with the Ukraine event, we want to make sure that we have that technical capability. You know, we want the technical experts in the room as the decisions are made. That's really important, that they need to be, you know, providing that key information, the key technical data to make sure that we have sound, you know, sound decision processes made in this. In doing that, though, we've recognized some of these things that I think Corey brought up earlier, relationships and all, that we realize in order to make those decisions, you've got to have good, strong relationships, both in country and region, and you need to make sure you have those before this happens, so that you can actually draw on that capability so you can make decisions. You know, it's, you know, we've quickly found out public information could be all over the board on these types of events. So as much as you could really have people near and on the ground to help provide information so you can start making those technical assessments, then we could, like I say, make those technical assessments. You know, we have great capabilities. We have 17 national labs in the United States with experts all over the board, so we can go to them as long as we start having information that we can, you know, provide, can do data analysis, can look at truly determining what are the conditions, what are the gaps, what are the real needs, because you can't always hear, you know, quickly from folks what are the true needs. So making sure that we had those relationships is something that I think we had in place at Fukushima, and we continued to push after Fukushima. Actually, one thing we continue to do that I got to praise within the department, we've continued to expand. The Department of Energy has energy attaches that they've started, you know, they've always had in different countries, but they've continued to expand that. We had an energy attache in Ukraine. they were very instrumental, along with our energy attaché in Poland, because as we start identifying needs that we think we can provide, working with those contacts at our embassies, but also with our in-country contacts, with our relationships that we've developed with utilities in different countries, to be able to find those resources. Because, yeah, we can identify those needs, but as Jay noted, I think for both of these, the Fukushima event and what's going on in Ukraine, it's hard to figure out how to get material there. So you need to have people on the ground that can help you on that. So having those relationships in advance and making sure you're establishing those relationships in advance are extremely important, and us being able to respond in a timely manner. One other thing I guess I would want to point out also, as far as Fukushima to Ukraine, this industry is a good learning industry. Obviously, there were a lot of things learned from Fukushima that resulted in flex systems and a really focus on emergency power systems and getting power to the various reactors so that you can increase your response time. A lot of those were put in effect in Ukraine. And we actually had programs working with them to how to extend those type activities already right before this happened. But that's at least made us where we're focused on how you keep power to the plants, as opposed to trying to reestablish complete power systems. So it was good that we had those lessons learned to be from Fukushima that got applied across the industry, that has helped make us have still a challenging problem, but it's improved us being able to respond here some as well. So.
Speaking of calling an audible, in order to make this slightly more of a discussion, something came up that I just, in hearing this discussion, I think it's really important, because I think the lessons are instructive, the differences between Fukushima and the current situation in Ukraine. Most emergency preparedness and response was designed for the idea of a natural disaster, an accident, something, a one-time thing at one location at a time, right? And then in the idea of a deliberate action, that really evolved after 9/11 and the growing sense that nuclear terrorism, that could include sabotage, was a real threat, and our systems evolved to meet that threat. But again, it was related to a one-time action at one location. The timeline that we're dealing with for preparation, but also the uncertainty that we're dealing with in this case, I think is extremely sobering, right? So we have, the reason that we're in a non-permissive environment is not because there was a natural disaster and the roads are closed, or because, there's an area that's denied because of radiation, but rather because of an ongoing warring, a conflict. And so we're having to think about what is the appropriate response, and therefore what preparation are we looking towards for an incident at a reactor with multiple units, at a reactor with multiple units and dry spent fuel storage, at a reactor with multiple units and spent fuel storage, at multiple reactors with all of those things, at high activity or radioactive source storage. We're having to think about all of these things at once. So it's not one source term at one location. It's what could any of these look like independently, and what could any of these look like in combination with any other? And then you add the almost unthinkable additional element of a nuclear weapon use. And where does our emergency preparedness and response come in that case as well? So I think this is really exposing a level of risk and threat that we haven't had to live with and really think about. And our systems were not designed for it. So it's not fair to say the systems are not capable. The systems are extremely capable and extremely robust, and actually I think have proven themselves to be remarkably capable, even in light of a kind of situation that they were not designed to address. So what lessons we do take from that, I think it's going to be really interesting. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some additional investment. What has proven to be, a remarkable international capability to respond and to engage, And we don't want to predict, a multi-point military action in any location at any given time. I hope this never happens again. But it would be remiss of us to not think about what the actual lessons and real consequences are, and how they do differ from those, previous events from which we've not only drawn consequences, but, reinforced our system to address.
Any other comments right now on that? Thank you. Thank you. And I have one more question. I think we have time for everyone to participate in the question. And that is, what are some key takeaways you have for the international community and other member states who are watching these events unfold from afar? Mr.
Yeah,
White,
I have the mic,
microphone.
so I'll start. And that way you can forget what I've said when all these other people say smarter things, more considered things maybe. Look, Corey has just raised a lot of them. I think for me, an important takeaway is one is just sort of the essential nature of information sharing in the nuclear energy space, and frankly, you could apply this to a lot of other spaces. But in this case, it's particularly important, just given the keen public interest and sort of irreducible, I think, public sort of concern maybe is too strong a word, but at least when the public becomes aware of things nuclear, they pay attention, and so information in that is really important. And I think as Carlos highlighted, that doesn't just happen. Like, it has to be created. Like, those networks of creating that information, collecting, have to be created. For me, that's a big takeaway. We're unfortunately better today than we were before or 6 months ago, and then before Fukushima, at the kind of information clearinghouse function and coordination. And then I take, I pay a lot of attention to what Corey is highlighting of, a lesson of a more long-lived challenge, in a sense, for a safety event, as a kind of new takeaway, in the same way that Fukushima, I think as Jay was talking about it, that was a kind of new realization of the timelines that could be involved and what the designs and preparation had to be involved, had to be done for. So those are the ones for me.
Thank you.
Again, I'm kind of focused on that civil nuke perspective, I guess, in this. But the one thing I guess I'll point out, we've talked about how important relationships and partnerships and all those kind of things are in responding. What this overall event, I think, has also showed us is how energy security is national security as well. And as people are looking at their energy, they need to look at it from that perspective. It's their national security that they're looking at as well, and when they're looking at how they go about partnerships and all like that, they need to think about that from a national security perspective for the individual countries, because, like I say, as noted, we're getting toward winter. These plants, the Ukrainian people need power. It's going to be very important, and the region needs power. And yeah, this is the national security issue for each country as they look about establishing their partnerships.
So I think in 2021, Ann, you were the conference president for the Emergency Preparedness and Response Conference. And 500 people attended. It was, I think, 90 states. And a couple of things come out of that. One is preparedness starts before the event, right? I mean, that's really you've heard that here. If you have not practiced, and again, one would suggest that much of what Ukraine did to bring its reactor fleet up to current standards, and also to make sure they had probably didn't prepare them for war, but it certainly prepared them for it certainly would have been worse if they had not had a good, robust program. The other piece, though, is as we think about the future, kind of channeling some of what Corey just mentioned, as well as Anthony and you. If we have this fleet of SMRs deployed really all over the place, right? If we're really going to make a meaningful dent at at the clean carbon or zero carbon energy sources. That's one of the ones. We probably ought to have the regulators thinking long and hard about how robust is security and safety by design. Right? Because we might be putting these small reactors in places we had never really thought about, right? And those are really important kinds of considerations now to do. And I would ask you a question. How would EPR 2023 look? How is it going to be different? We've heard I wasn't going to bring it up, but Corey brought it up. You know, the nuclear saber rattling is really unprecedented. We've not had our people think seriously about a nuclear detonation since just after 9/11, and that was, again, a onesie-twosie terrorist maybe thing. We've not had this kind of a presence in the public mind that a country would actually deliberately use nuclear weapons well outside of these well-stated doctrinal kind of lines. That's going to drive, and Ann's office is one of the ones that does a lot of great work with our IAEA colleagues and member states about training. So Ann, to you, how do you think that training conference is going to look next year if we do it next year?
Well, looking back on how the emergency preparedness and response community responded to Fukushima here at the IAEA, we had special meetings and conferences. We invested a lot of time at looking at how we would improve the system. We had all of the member states come with good ideas. Many of the ideas were just outside of the box, and it took a lot of work to manage and to assess the proposals for change and implementing change to what was really going to be useful. And that was about a 3 or 4 year process after Fukushima, and I would expect something the same here. But in the end, we came out with improvements. As Mike mentioned a phrase, he said the industry is a good learning industry, and so is emergency preparedness and response. We have to learn the hard way, because you have to have the emergency and then we learn, which is not, it's not the most positive way. But we always do learn from these emergencies, because, as we always say, that every emergency is something special. You plan and you prepare, and then your event is going to be something else, and we certainly are in a something else mode right now. Corey, would you like to have some wrap-up comments here and your thoughts on all of this?
Well, I'll be very quick because I think so much has been said by my colleagues, but I would just add one more thing, which is no country needs to go it alone in this space. I mean, just as a nuclear incident or accident will affect more than one country, the preparation need not be in isolation. And so whether it's your countries or your neighbors or counterparts that you meet this week during the General Conference, I strongly urge folks to keep in mind that on the U.S. side, whether it's from the nuclear security and detection cooperation, whether it's from the emergency preparedness and response cooperation, whether it's equipment, policy, regulatory, training, we have a lot of capability that we're ready to deploy with our partners. And then you add to that the amazing resources of the IAEA. And let me echo the support for the IAEA and the Incident Emergency Center. There is so much available that if any country, that either your countries or your counterparts are thinking about what more could or should we do, there's a lot here for that. And you have 5 people here on the stage who are prepared to talk to it, certainly Carlos and a lot of other counterparts as well. So we encourage folks to be our partners, because we learn from those collaborations. This is not a one-way street. So it's to our benefit that we work with more and more partners out there in the world, and we really appreciate those partnerships and are ready to deliver.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was excellent closing remarks. We appreciate all of the comments here from the panel. So thank you for the roundtable. Thank you. Thank you very much. It was really interesting. I appreciate everyone's contributions there. And we have 2 more presentations before we close our side event today. And I would like to invite up Paloma Richard from the Office of Nuclear Incident Policy and Cooperation to give us a presentation on U.S. Department of Energy efforts and capacity building. And so this will point to the kinds of capacity that we can help develop.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you for that wonderful roundtable and for those closing remarks about partnerships with the international community and being able to do capacity building for emergency preparedness and response. So my name is Paloma Richard. I work in the Office of Nuclear Incident Policy and Cooperation under Director Anne Heinrich, and it falls under the Office of Counterterrorism and Counterproliferation within NNSA. So this is the Counterterrorism and Counterproliferation mission, and the Office of Nuclear Incident Policy and Cooperation is highlighted here in green. One of our primary missions is to provide targeted training to domestic and international partners on emergency preparedness and response. And we do that in a variety of ways, and we do it for a nuclear or radiological incident regardless of the cause. So we are preparing for incidents whether they are accidental, whether they are deliberate, or whether they are due to natural events. So our office delivers trainings in various aspects of consequence management. And the reason we do this is because there are always questions that leadership will ask, and there are always questions that our partners have, which is, how do we know if there's been a release? Might there be a release? What are the risks involved? What are the threats? How do we know and how do we respond? And really, are we prepared? So we work with our partners to develop their preparedness capabilities. We work with them so that they can answer those questions and have confidence in situations, and that they develop best practices for establishing and maturing an incident and emergency response mission and capabilities within their domestic response systems and within their international response systems. Because as we know, these incidents and emergencies, they do not respect national boundaries. And because of that, again, no country needs to go it alone. So we provide targeted, tailored training to our partners, and some of our partners include the IAEA. We've also been partnering quite a bit with NATO, and we have many direct bilateral engagements as well. This slide here shows some of the training courses that we offer, including public communications and crisis management, medical response, aerial measuring systems and detection systems, search and detection trainings, and preparedness for major public events. Our courses offer flexibility in that they can be tailored to a partner's needs. Some are just a few hours, and some are multi-week-long events that are spaced out in between that build off and complement one another. It really depends on what our partners' needs are, and we tailor them to enhance their current capabilities and meet them where they're at. And also we do technical exchanges. I mean, we learn from our partners as well in a variety of areas. And we offer them remotely. We offer our courses remotely or as hybrid in addition to our traditional or in-person offerings, and much of that is due to COVID, which kind of forced us to modernize a bit. So that's one positive aspect coming from this pandemic. I'll speak briefly about preparedness and operations and some of the resources that we provide to our international partners. These are capabilities that are housed out of our Office of Nuclear Incident Response. And we provide triage and spectral data analysis to our partners. So kind of going back to what Deputy Administrator Hinderstein mentioned regarding detection, sometimes our partners may have a hit and they need a closer look. So we can provide subject matter experts to do a deeper analysis to identify the radioisotopes for first responders. We also provide access for medical consultation, and they will do radiological dose assessment and treatment advice. And we provide plume dispersion modeling. And that is an international exchange program that's based off of NARAC, housed out of Livermore National Laboratory. And then we also have consequence management home team experts that are available as well. And I'll just close by mentioning some of our exercises and interdiction training that can be offered to our international partners. We host a Silent Thunder Counterterrorism tabletop exercises, and that is a partnership between NNSA and the FBI. And it's often site-specific based on security upgrades. We also do a weapons of mass destruction interdiction tabletop exercise known as our Eminent Discovery Series, and that is a partnership with NNSA's Office of Nonproliferation and Arms Control. And we've done that with 22 countries, including Kenya, Egypt, Algeria, Jordan, Ukraine, Afghanistan, and India. And we also offer counter-RDD scenario-based policy discussions, such as the Winter Tiger series that we have with the Republic of Korea, the third of which is occurring in, I believe, December of this year. So in conclusion, thanks for the opportunity to present today. There are some handouts and some literature regarding our capacity building resources at the table in the back. Again, the partnership is just so integral to being effective and having a strong emergency preparedness and response regime internationally. I also want to thank the Incident and Emergency Center and all of the work and cooperation that we have together. And now I'll turn it over to Katerina Kutz from the IEC so that she can discuss some of their capacity building efforts.
Good morning, dear colleagues. So my name is Katerina Kutz. As Paloma has already introduced me. I'm working as an emergency preparedness officer in the Incident and Emergency Center. And I would like also to say thank you very much for the roundtable. It was really an excellent discussion, as it could not emphasize more the importance of the preparedness. And here I am to brief you about what the agency is actually doing to support our member states with the preparedness, with their national preparedness. And I would like to start, first of all, with the roles the agency is implementing in the area of emergency preparedness. So first of all, we are developing safety standards, technical guidance, and tools to support not just member states, but also international organizations with the development of their national EPR frameworks. We are implementing majority of capacity building activities, and this is exactly the focus of this presentation. We are offering appraisal services, peer review missions to review the capabilities and arrangements, national capabilities and arrangements of our member states against the IAEA safety standards. We take actions to keep us, the incident and emergency system, prepared, the in-house preparedness, and of course also we take actions to ensure that we effectively and coordinate the interagency preparedness, interagency response, and this acronym mechanism was already introduced by Carlos in his presentation. So in terms of the capacity building activities, our capacity building program is targeted at the four areas, which I would like to speak now quickly about. First of all, we are taking actions to human resources development, and we do that through the delivery of different workshops, training courses, and exercises on a variety of topics. Very often, our exercises are developed in support of the specific publications. We take into account the variety, the diverse range of stakeholders with different backgrounds, with different responsibilities, and when developing our training courses, we utilize the adult learning and participants-oriented methodology so that we can build further on their backgrounds. We try to introduce the state-of-the-art technologies like the virtual reality. We have e-learnings. We are offering our activities virtually and in person, which is, again, thank you for the COVID experience. We understand the multi-language that we are dealing. We are now working in the multi-language environment, and that's why we are translating and deliver our events in different UN languages. When talking about the capacity building, I cannot mention about one of the recent developments, which is the master degree program. The agency, together with an international expert, developed a curriculum for the master degree program in the EPR, which is developed to provide postgraduate education in the EPR for nuclear and radiological emergencies. It's aimed at the graduate students. It's a very flexible program, and to the graduate students which are seeking career and professional development in the EPR. And the advantage of this program that is actually all the member states, regardless of their nuclear power program, will gain from this program. So this is our sort of advanced level of capacity building in the area of emergency preparedness and response. We are also taking actions for the institutional and infrastructural development. Upon request, we follow the country needs and we implement a range of activities, which majority of them are implemented under the scope of the technical cooperation projects. We are participating in supporting them with the preparation and evaluation of the exercises, with review and development of their respective national, regional, or organizational emergency plans and procedures. We support them with the procurement of equipment for the respective emergency response facilities and EPR organizations. One of the services we are delivering, which is also one of the, let's say, mechanisms for the infrastructural development, is the PREF, Emergency Preparedness and Review Mission, which is very important because it supports member states to evaluate, to review their infrastructure and answer the question whether it's mature enough, whether it's sufficient, adequate to respond effectively to any nuclear type of, to any type of a nuclear or radiological emergency. The prerequisite for EPREF is EPRIMS, and Carlos again also mentioned about it in his presentation. EPRIMS is the web-based platform, emergency preparedness and response information management system that was developed for the use of member states for their self-assessment. So actually member states themselves may evaluate their infrastructure and also share with other member states how they've met certain requirements and recommendations of the IAEA in the area of EPR. We are supporting knowledge management and networking, and for that we have established in July 2019 the International Network for Education and Training in Emergency Preparedness and Response that aims to contribute to global efforts to create, enhance, and sustain capacity building in EPR, including an effective and collaborative network of capacity building centers for emergency preparedness and response. And here I again want to make a reference to the services and tools which we have to prepare, such as an EPREF and EPRIMS, and they also provide some support for the knowledge management. In particular, during the EPREF mission, the peers do exchange their knowledge, exchange their experiences, and enhance the cooperation. With regard to the capacity building centers, so this concept was developed to enhance the delivery of trainings, events, activities in the area of emergency preparedness and response. We currently have 8 capacity building centers established worldwide, and with their support, we are delivering capacity building activities at the international, regional levels, utilizing the resources and expertise of our member states, but also to ensure the sustainability of the EPR framework at the national level, and of course, not forget about the cooperation among the different organizations and capacity building centers. With that, I thank you for your attention. I hope I managed to do it in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Katerina had the unenviable last slot in the presentations, and you can tell that people are very enthusiastic about this work, and in particular today. So thank you, Katerina, for being so speedy. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. I especially want to thank the speakers and our roundtable participants, and I also want to thank the audience. Thank you for making time in this very busy week to spend time with us here in this side event. I really appreciate it. And I'd like to challenge the member states here with one thought, and that is to actively participate in emergency preparedness and response. I encourage you to participate in and register your national assets in the Response and Assistance Network. I encourage you to join, participate in, and support the Emergency Preparedness and Response Standards Committee. And finally, I encourage you to engage with the Incident and Emergency Center, take part in the excellent trainings and exercises, and also contribute your subject matter experts to the work of the Incident and Emergency Center. Your contributions are really important in making the Incident and Emergency Center strong. So with that, I'd like to close the session. Thank you all very much.